happening? How we doing? Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
How we doing?
Great.
Super.
Good. So the word of the day is community, and we have brought somebody that has brought in community 3 times with a wonderful background. Mabel Guzman, how are you?
I'm very good, Brent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Give us a brief introduction of you, and then we can kind of jump right into the word.
Sure. Oh, so me, I'm currently right now, I'm a realtor, been a realtor for 22 years and in Chicago. So in Chicago, for many NAR people, they know it's sort of like, for me, it's the center of my universe. Also or as I say, the center of the universe, and NAR has an office building here as well as in Washington, D.C. Currently for 2020, I am your Vice President of Association Affairs for National Association of Realtors. But through my 22-year span, I think pretty much my focus has always been not only helping people, but really kind of understanding the role that they have a responsibility in, that once they move into a place, they really need to set roots. And by setting roots is participate in your community. Also for myself, I was like, well, if this is what you're saying, you also have to, do it hands and feet as well. What are you doing for your community as an individual? And I'm involved through my church through homeless ministry. I've done habitat builds in Louisiana. By the way, St. Bernard Parish, been there. Been to Mobile, Alabama.
The parish.
St. Bernard Parish, yeah. Was there for a week. And even here in Illinois. So I just feel that we have a sense of responsibility, right, to each other, to where we live and the world overall, let's just say. I mean, I know it's kind of Pollyannish or whatever you could say, but if we just commit a little bit of our time to helping people within our community gets better, it gets stronger.
Wow. All right, so that's it.
Yeah, done.
All in. Holy smokes. You got the heat. Jeez. That's awesome. So I mean, from your standpoint, I mean, just kind of looking over some of the things that you've done, and you believe me, you've only hit the high points of what you've done in order to build community. I think it's fantastic. So thanks for being here. So do we want to do a quick 30 seconds, Lee and Evan, on what community means to you?
Sure.
Fire away.
Yeah, I think of belonging, finding your people and those people who together belong to, whether you want to call it the tribe, the pack, the community, whatever. That's the word. Peter Block had that book a few years back about community being all about the sense of belonging, and that really stuck with me as a framework. So that's what I think of as belonging.
Yeah, that's good. Lee?
I think community is any time that people come together with something in common. It may be that what's in common is geographic, where they live, the same area of town. Or maybe it's like us, where it's our industry and what we believe as realtors, our realtor community. And of course with me, and I said on the other video, I have a community of Great Dane owners, right? Because I love Great Dane. That's what we have in common. Yeah. So whatever a group of people has in common, that, brings them together for that community. And hopefully everybody is a member of more than one community, right?
Yeah. I hope. Yeah. Well, that's kind of the first question that I had for everyone. And, how do you know that you're involved? Like, how do you start? What's the beginning of the community? What does that look like?
Wow, that's a good question. I think a lot of people are confused, or actually they don't know how to start.
Yeah.
They don't know how to take the first step. Sometimes you just ask somebody, right? And all of a sudden, by asking them, they're like, yes. First is the power of yes. And then from there, they're like, oh, this was easier than I thought. All I had to do was, and then they share it with other people. But I think that's a really, really good question. How do you get started? I think sometimes it's asking yourself, am I doing enough, or what can I do? And then it's asking other people, finding out what the needs are in your community, or someone's going to ask you. So I think there's a lot of options. I think that's really the biggest question, I think, for some folks. How do I get started? Where do I go?
So this is one of those times where it's also, I think, really important to know your why. Why do you want to get involved in this community? Why do you want this to be your community? I think when real estate agents first get started in business, they have people tell them, join a club, get involved with something. Because if you're getting involved in a community, so the one, it's not going to work, right? And two, that's just not the car.
So Evan, let's talk a bit about you. You said the pack.
The wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack, right? And to me, that everybody has to pitch in for the community to be strong. And when the community is strong, it makes all the individuals stronger. So I think there's this sense of equality that has to come along, where everybody gets to contribute and everybody has to contribute for the community to flourish. If you have people who are part of the community, I'm getting a message that we froze and then bounced off. So I'm not sure if anybody's listening here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mine says we're live on Facebook.
Yeah, I have a live.
So
let's see. Oh yeah,
but I think we're back.
Oh, we're back. That's so exciting. Yeah. So what I was saying about equality is that I think what makes a community strong is everybody contributes. You cannot have a couple of contributors or a couple of drivers and everybody else kind of taking from the community. And that's where I think that quote ties in, that the strength of the wolf is the pack, that when the community is stronger, it makes everybody stronger. What do y'all think of that?
I got to say, I think we're twins separated at birth, because I've used that quote.
Oh, nice.
Seriously, I have. The first time I used it,
I'll send you one of these.
Please. I'm telling you, I used that quote for the first time, and I know exactly when I used it. And it was when I was president of the Chicago Association of Realtors, and that was 2011. Okay, so and it was for an RPAC fundraiser. I said exactly that, and I said RPAC is our strength. That we as a community, when we work together, we get a lot more done, right? So when Brent brought it up, I was like, when he said wolf, I said, I know what he's gonna say. Totally know what he's gonna say. But it's
Evan uses
right?
it often, so he gets all the credit for that. So let me ask this, kind of going back to a little bit of something that Lee said, in terms of identifying, join a club or a group or something. So from a community standpoint, do you find it or does it find you? Like how, from an involvement standpoint, I mean, sometimes you can find it in terms of just like a geographic community, but from a service standpoint, Mabel, looking at your Habitat for Humanity, was that something that you sought out to do, or did that sort of find you in a way? How did you make your way down to St. Bernard Parish, I guess?
Okay, well, it's actually very interesting. So after the levees broke in Hurricane Katrina, and I sent money to the Red Cross, but it felt empty, right? It didn't seem like, okay, I know the money is going to go to help people, but I felt like it wasn't really enough. And I wanted to be part of a solution, let's just say, or part of a change. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go down there. By the way, I haven't gone to an AIR conference in a little bit, and there's one going on. So I'm going to go to the conference right after, but I'm going to spend that whole week in St. Bernard Parish. So I started researching Habitat for Humanity down there. I signed up, I went, got a tetanus shot. I signed all these waivers, and then I went down there and by myself, and they pulled me together with 15 people. And that's the thing, when Evan said tribe, it's absolutely true. And when Lee said finding your focus, what happened is 15 people from all across the country came together in one singular purpose, and that was to help homeowners in St. Bernard Parish. We ended up gutting homes for the senior citizens and for the disabled, because the parish had a whole deal that if you got your home, except for the bathroom, they'll come back and they'll help you out. Well, the seniors and disabled don't really have that capacity to do it on their own. So this Habitat did it for them. We slept in a high school. In high school, they turned part of the gym into a cafeteria. We had a classroom where women slept and the men slept somewhere else, and we're all on mattresses or cots on the floor. It was, it was kind of roughing it. I had no complaints about, I like not having hot water one day or something. I was like, you know what? I'm just glad we can shower because, we are totally blessed because when we leave here, we're able to go to our homes and we're going to have, living really seriously in the lap of luxury compared to what some of these folks have to put up with. So imagine 15 people from all over the country, singular purpose, and it is to help people. And that to me was really, really powerful. I just felt like, oh my gosh, we're all here and we're driven by this. And we don't even live in this community, but we felt a responsibility to this community, which, reminds me of a Thomas Paine quote. The world is my country. All its citizens are my brethren, and my religion is to do good. So I just wanted to do some good.
Well, as a Louisianian, thank you for coming down. St. Bernard Parish it's been hit pretty hard. It was a New Orleans got all the headlines, but St. Bernard Parish, and there's like some history going way back between New Orleans. They call it the parish. The parish is what they call it. It's a wonderful place with some great people. So thanks for doing that.
Oh, loved it.
So, Evan, what about you? How do you find community, or does it find you?
Well, I'm thinking both, but honestly, I think most of the communities I think of find me, not that they come knocking on my door, but that I don't go out looking for a particular community. It's conversations, it's run-ins, it's fate, kind of like the idea suddenly these 15 people with a singular purpose. So I think it's everywhere. I think what's really interesting is as realtors, we think of community as like our neighborhoods and this geographic thing. But at the same time, as realtors, we have so many communities across the country and across the world that we kind of have found and get to play in that have nothing to do with geography whatsoever. So I think Lee's point about finding your why and the singular focus and all that to me, that feels like a real element of the community more so than space, right? What are you about? What are your values? What are your ideals? What do you have in common? What are you trying to accomplish? That sort of thing.
Well, that's kind of one of the things that I when I started thinking about this word, it was what was interesting is you kind of think about how the word has almost evolved given technology, right? Is from a community standpoint, it almost had to be physical, whereas now you're from a virtual standpoint, you can join anything for any reason at any time, just kind of virtually. So Lee, talk about that. Talk about, I mean, even from a Great Dane owner standpoint, how the virtual part has really changed community.
Well, no, I think you're right. I mean, we've had Great Danes for years, and we didn't know anybody else with a Great Dane, right? But then along came Facebook and Facebook groups, and so now we have like a limited but a relationship with a number of people around the country, and we even have play dates, in our city of with other Dane owners, right? And by the way, if you like dogs, every breed has one of these groups. Just look on Facebook. But that it's not just dogs, right? It translates into everything we do, and I think I think that whether or not you find the community or it finds you, a lot of that has to do with your personality or just where you're at in life right now. What moment is this for you? But the thing is, if you're looking for community, if there's something you want, it's easier to find now than it's ever been because of that word virtual, right? Because you're not limited to your neighbors or asking your neighbor if they know someone that does blah, blah. You just go online and find it. And because it's through technology and it's not face to face, people aren't as afraid. And so they're more open to those new introductions on a virtual format than they are to go meet a stranger somewhere. Right. Sure. So I think, while I know that a lot of us can list some negatives about how our communities have moved to different virtual platforms and texting and not being face to face and all that, there's some real positives there as well, right? I mean, I think we're expanding our horizons by being more open. Does that answer the question? Did I get it?
I think you got it.
Yeah, I was just curious, you know, from, you know, when you think about it almost seems weird that 10 years ago, where was all this community? Like where, you know, maybe do we just join more? Is there such thing as too many, I guess?
I don't know. Sometimes I think maybe we are trying to dissect ourselves, right? Like into smaller groups. I mean, we do talk about polarization, but there's a way also that by dissection, you actually get to, you know, people really care about something so much. Those are the passionate few, right? And those passionate few are the ones that spark that energy for other people to come and join and participate. So even if the group gets smaller, I think that's okay because, you know, we all have, you know, as Evan said, we have our tribes, you know, but within that, you know, let's look at 1.3 million realtors, right? Within the 1.3 million, there are smaller groups, even based on committee structure if you participate at the National Association of Realtors. But even within your neighborhood, okay, we have this app for Avondale where I live, where we communicate, you know, like my cat got out and I put a notice, my cat got out, you know. Actually, we had a neighbor whose pet snake got out and it went on the app, like, oh, Rosie's out. If you see her, she's really friendly. We're like, I don't know what a friendly snake is like.
Yeah.
But basically, you know, it's our Avondale, but even within Avondale, then it's like, you know, my 4 blocks of Avondale versus, you know, the 100 square miles. That makes it up. So it's, you know, it's fascinating, right? But polarization definitely is not a good thing. But by dividing ourselves into smaller groups, also we get expertise, if you really think about it. Because then you have people not only that are passionate few that create that spark, but they also have the expertise that you need for a particular subject. So, you know, I guess if we look at things on the positive side, then that's how we're going to see it. Are there always going to be some negatives? Sure. But don't let those negatives in and let them control what your group is going to be like, the message you want to put out there, and the good things that you are doing.
I think the polarizing, that concept, I think is so interesting because we do, you know, this would be on the negative column, right? But we do see that where within these communities, then there become like sects or what's the word, you know, cliques of people. And then that becomes, instead of being inclusive, that maybe makes people within the community feel other or outside of that. And then suddenly you've gone from a strong community to this small group of people who maybe lose support, you know? And I think we see that a lot in communities.
Yeah, so I agree. You know, the thing is that we just can't allow it to control, right? That's all. Acknowledge it. And it could be just that maybe somebody's not listening to their point of view, you know, and I don't mind people disagreeing with me. I think sometimes it's like, oh, really? I want to know why. That's, you know, Lee brings up why, you know, why. So tell me why. I want to know, where are we together on this? Or why are we separate? And maybe can we have some, you know, some unity on this, or at least compromise, which compromise I think is a great word.
So what about managing the community, kind of going along that line in terms of, you know, I think a lot of times we celebrate a community in terms of there's a commonality. I mean, when I think of community, that's the first word that comes to my mind is common, right? Is you're part of, whether you live in the same area, believe the same thing, share in the same hobbies, interests, whatever it is. That's kind of the first thing that I think. But when I mean, newsflash, we're all created different, but so how do you manage those uncommon aspects of the community? Is that a bad thing?
I mean, that's probably the hardest question. It's a $64,000 question.
Yeah.
How do you manage it? I think it's really through respect, acknowledgement, right? You acknowledge the differences. You don't put them down and you just say, you know, you see things differently. And that's a good thing because maybe we're missing a piece in here.
Right.
That's what, community is not about groupthink. It's also about it's about acceptance, right? And accepting all that are there because all those different moving pieces actually make it so much more interesting, right? And you really come up with better and ideas, more innovation when you have, sometimes people like disagreeing on little bits and pieces, but in the end, but the thing is that they're all going towards the same goal, right? We all want to do this together. Maybe we want to approach it different ways. So let's see how we can come together in the end. We're still going to have the same results and we're still going to reach that goal. We're just going to do it a little differently. That's all. Yeah. And I think in the end, that's what we really need to focus on. What is the goal? What is it that we want to accomplish together? And let's not focus on how you're going to do it. Let's focus on how we're all going to do it together. We're just going to do it a little differently. That's all.
That makes me think of conflict resolution or negotiating when you return to common ground. Whenever there's conflict, you go back down to common ground and revisit the idea, like, why are we here to begin with? So I think I wrote down respect, acknowledge, accept, and I think I would add awareness, just this being aware of, your vibe as a community or how you're perceived and of every level, so that there's, there is equality and people, I think that's a good way to keep it as a whole where everyone's equal, as opposed to getting some of that polarization we were talking about.
And I think that's the hardest part too. Go ahead, Lee.
Well, I was gonna say, all of those things that Evan said, and Mabel as well, roll into leading by example, right? If you want everyone to respect each other, then you have to respect everyone, And I love the line that she said, community is acceptance. I hope Jody got that in the chat box. I can't see the chat box, but community is acceptance. I'm going to remember that. I think that is just a really powerful statement because it applies everywhere in every community.
Right.
Well, I think that's the hard. I mean, that's the hard part about this, right? Is we're here talking about community, and all of those things just take a great deal of maturity. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, in a virtual world, it's much easier to take the low road than subsequently the high road. And the bigger the community gets, and you can even see this within our NAR family, you're going to have people that challenge, and sometimes the community looks like the man or the status quo or the fix is in. So kind of trying to do it for the betterment. How do you go about kind of looking at this from, we want to be part of the community, we want to do what's best for the community, but we're still going to have people that challenge and question, and sometimes we're the ones challenging and questioning. So how do we strike that balance, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
We need that. We need that person that is challenging and asking questions, and even that person who is making us roll our eyes, right? Because if we're so arrogant that we think we're right and nobody else has a good point, then we don't need to be in the community, right? I mean,
tread lightly, Lee. I feel like you're talking about me.
Yeah, Mabel, we didn't introduce you to Grandpa Brent. There is a Grandpa, and he comes out occasionally. But yeah, I mean, I want to hear that other opinion, and as I expect them to respect me, I completely have to respect them as well, right? It's about hearing that and react. I don't have to agree with them, but I'm going to hear it and respect it and react to it. If in a community the size of NAR, if one person's saying it, at least 10 people are thinking it.
Well, that's my question. Is it too big? Go ahead, Evan.
Well, I mean, let's be real about it. I think maturity is a good word, and it's good to say that we want to hear it. But if somebody comes at you, that's hard, right? Like your ego, it's hard to keep yourself in check and be objective and say, no, this input will make us better, So I just want to kind of acknowledge that it's easier to say than it is to do.
It's brutally difficult. I mean, it's hard to kind of figure that out. That's why I like asking the questions, because I don't have the answers. But I think, you know, from a lot of those standpoints, I don't really know.
Yeah, but you said something, Evan. You said about being aware. Well, being self-aware, let's just
Right.
say. And then are you, you know, and I guess when somebody comes at you, you know, our first instinct is, you know, flee or fight, right? But maybe our instinct really should be, can I be a bridge, right? How can I be a bridge where I can get your idea and that person's idea? Or if you're crapping on somebody, you came over to me because I didn't like what they said, and I don't know why they want to do this. Why do they want to change? And it comes from change. Let's just be, I think a lot of it comes from, I want to see change here, right? And people reflexively become like, what? You know, and instead of change, you know, we're hearing the word pivot, you know, but it's also adapting, right? So can we be bridges? Can we be self-aware in that moment and say, I am going to be a bridge because I don't want this falling to pieces, number one. If you're coming to me to crap on this person, I'm going to acknowledge you, and I'm going to say, you know, maybe they're coming from it from a different way. Maybe they just want things to be a little better, or maybe the situation they have where they live, this is happening, and they think this is a solution. So let's think about where they're coming from before we say that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Or let's get some background, right? So being a bridge, I think, is really the hard thing.
Yeah.
Somebody has to do it. So you're that moderating force, right? I mean, even though deep down inside, you're like, why did you come to me to crap about this person? You know, that upsets me. I want to slap you because that's not cool, you know? Or the other instinct is, you're totally right. They're crazy. I don't understand, you know? So the maturity, being self-aware, you know, and then just saying, I'm going to be a bridge right now. I don't want to get in the mud with you. And I also don't want to, you know, like slap you around or anything either. I want to respect you and acknowledge you. And then I have respect and acknowledgement for the other person. Let's, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go there.
Right. Yeah, Patrick in our comments is basically saying it's a mindset thing, and there is a certain level of self-awareness, and that's kind of one of the challenges. Is we can sit in this group and have self-awareness, but sometimes not everyone in the community has that level of self-awareness. So that's kind of the hard part, is saying, okay, sometimes people join the community just to be the anti, just to be the shining example of the exact opposite approach. So I didn't mean to turn this into a negative world, but
it's not negative. I think it's actually very realistic.
Right.
And we should talk about it, because the thing is, in this conversation, somebody is listening and could be saying, yeah, you know what? I could have been a bridge in that one conversation. Maybe next time I'm going to be that moderating force. I'm not going to choose sides. I'm going to say, you both have value. Let's see how we can make this work. Or even try to get people to understand each other so that they have dialogue. That's all. You don't have to agree with each other, but at least understand each other's point of view.
Right.
Well, you know, it's funny, that book that I mentioned earlier by Peter Block, Community, I think it's called Structure of Belonging. And his structure is all about creating conversations. I can't remember it offhand. It's been a while since I read it, but there's these 5 different types of conversations. But the whole point is that community is driven by conversation where people are brought together and encouraged to actually contribute and listen to each other for the better good, you know, as opposed to a lot of the structures we have in place now in society and associations and communities where, you know, practically speaking, conversation isn't necessarily encouraged depending on what circle you're in.
Well, In Other Words is doing it.
Yeah.
Lee York reached out to me and actually brought up an issue that I think it can be controversial for some people. And I just thought, there's the person who wants to bring about change, and that's going to be uncomfortable for people. Where she's coming from with it, though, is from a good place.
Right.
And the results of it are really, really good. So, that, again, it's kind of like, I'll be your bridge all day long.
Nice.
Well, can the community get
right now?
Yeah, wow, Lee.
You are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We think you're special, Lee.
Yeah, but she's not talking about the short bus.
Well, I know. Well,
Oh my gosh.
she's Louise, and we've devolved again. So can it be? Can at what point does it not become a community? Can it get too big? I think of like America. I don't think of America as a community, although we do have this common trait. I mean, I know communities can get very small, but can they get too big? At what point, or what's the next level of community?
I'm not sure who you're asking, but if you
I just throw them out. So fire away.
I don't know. I mean, really think about, even when you look at the civil rights movement, it took marches. It took a lot of people to come out to affect change, right? So having that many people take action, was that a bad thing? No, I don't think so, right?
Okay.
But a lot of people too can come together and create a little bit of a melee. I think, again, intentions, what is it that they want? And if it's a good result for everybody, and it's for coming from a positive place, then and then within that big group, I think there's smaller groups, and those smaller groups are there to support one big arching goal, right? This big hairy goal. But these little groups are coming together. They have their own little things, but whether they agree on is the big hairy goal.
Yeah.
So I think that's okay. If you have one big arching mission, and then you get all these smaller groups together, that's a beautiful thing. And then when it's over, then everybody goes the little ways. But you know what? They had a shared experience. And within that shared experience, it's something that really is memorable, because they'll never forget that. We were part of it.
They always have that in common.
Right.
Always.
That's something I wanted to bring up, was because I find this a lot in leadership and in leadership development. This singular focus, that how the community, or the connection of the community, can become about all these other things that have nothing to do with that singular focus. Like, we might get together to be on the whatever committee, and we bond throughout the year on that, and then we go our separate ways. But we have this connection that's like community, that stays with us forever in a lot of cases, that maybe has nothing to do with that original purpose. Do you find that? You guys find that?
I think so. Yeah. You kind of find your tribe within the tribe, right? You kind of start out with one common goal, and then you move, and the exact opposite happens as well. Sometimes you come together for a common purpose, and it sort of runs its course, and then you just kind of move on.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to see that person again. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you think about your various stages of life. I mean, you've got your high school friends and your community there, and then you go to college, or you move on after high school. Well, that's a whole different set of community. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It just has to be an evolution, right? My interests may change over time, and I think that's part of personal growth and professional growth. And as a result, one community may become more important, and one community may become a little bit less important. That's not bad.
No, I don't think it's bad. I think I totally agree. The thing is, it is part of personal growth. Also evolving. Maybe the mission of what your group is doing has evolved. It wants to do bigger things, right? Or, anything could happen. I think we just have to be open to the experience, and that, okay, you could say, yeah, the direction they're going, that's not where I want to be now. So you can remove yourself from that group, from that community, and then say, yeah, but these other people are doing something I'm much more interested in, right? Or you feel like, I've done everything I can here, I want to go do some more, let me find something else.
Yeah.
Well, if we're being good leaders, then I think it is a natural evolution that community would evolve and dissolve, right? Because we're developing each member of that community to do better and be more and to, to chase their dreams as it were. And that should mean them moving on to something bigger and better. And if we are good leaders and good stewards for all of them, they all go on to something bigger and better. And nobody needs this community anymore, right? Or it just maybe it's not that they don't need it, but it just kind of gradually goes away because they've found other sources to meet those needs, right? In their new higher level communities, right?
That's an interesting point. Just kind of talking about the leadership within the community, right? What is sort of the goal there? Evan, this is where you chime in.
Well, you remember when we were talking about collaborating a week or two ago? I can't remember exactly when that was, but I think that's an element in community. Like I keep coming back to equality, where if it's truly community, you might have, a quote unquote leader or leadership team, but everybody needs to be leaders in their own sense for the community to thrive. So you can have structures, instead of like a float, what do you call it? An org chart structure, more of a everybody on the same level. I don't know. That's the stuff that I enjoy. So maybe that's my bias, but that's what I think of as community. If I'm part of something and I have an idea that I can go bring it and run with it and maybe bring people along with me. If I have to stop and, wait for permission and run it through a whole structure, then that's a little bit different. There's still a place for that, but it's a little bit different than what I think of community. I don't know. Maybe I'm off track on that.
It's a little, well, one of the things that I thought about again, and it kind of is a little bit have to deal with this. I refer to it as givers and takers, right? Is you join some areas and you want to be a giver, where I want to contribute, where I have things to say. And then there's some communities where I want to be a taker. I need my cup filled up. I need people to tell me, to guide me, to lead me, so I think from that standpoint, that's kind of where where my brain was when I was asking a little bit about leadership is are you a giver or a taker? And, is that necessarily, I don't think it's a bad thing either way.
I don't know. As a leader, I think you have to be a very giving person. Because you're giving your time, number one.
Right.
So, but that's not all you're giving. You also have to give your ideas, right? And leader, which I like what Evan said, doesn't necessarily have to be the president. It could be anyone. Even in a committee structure, you could just be a member on this committee and then just say, hey, you know what? Why don't we do this, or why don't we start this, right? That's somebody being a leader because they stepped up and voiced a concern that is happening. I guess leader is such a broad word, and very subjective in terms of what people think it is, right? Some people are very strong personalities, and they lead that way, and it's a turnoff for some folks. Other folks are very measured, they have a soft power about them. And that kind of frustrates some other people because they want to see some person I want to see you get emotional about something. They're just not built that way.
Right.
So leader can be a lot of different things. And I guess it's really about what is it that you're going to respond to as an individual. But I think there's some leaders that, just kind of the package, sort of they know who to be in that moment and what is needed at that time and what they need to say, whether it is empathy, whether it is strength, whether it is having a 10-point plan, whatever, right? Whatever is called for at that time and in that place, they know how to deliver.
Right.
And that's when people feel like, yeah, you know what, they get us. This is what we need right now. And that's what they're giving us right now. So
I think you're right on, but I want to say, I think that that leader that you just described is also, in fact, has to be, I'm going to just say it, has to be.
She's throwing it down now.
I know, sure. I'm throwing it down.
All right.
Has to be the taker that Brent described, because they're taking advice from their trusted panel or their cabinet of what is needed, right? I mean, it's a collaboration. It's a group. Nobody does anything great all by themselves.
Not at all.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Not at all.
So I think that great, wonderful leader that Mabel described is also that taker that Brent described.
Yeah. And I wasn't trying to say taker was a negative term. I just think that there's sometimes you may join a community to explore, to figure out, is this something that's of interest to me? And, to kind of be the receiver of all of that info.
Yeah, to me, taker was a little different. To me, taker was somebody who was robbing resources.
Yeah.
Not, because, as opposed to a giver, which is somebody who is going to listen to other people because they're just kind of built that way. But I agree with you. You're never going to do this on your own. You have to listen to other people. It's about perspective. It's not about your own. It's not about your own experience, about a lot of experiences that are happening out there. And you want to make sure you heard from enough people.
Well, no, I don't know that this fits into any of the categories that we talked about, but isn't one of the great things about giving to a community that, besides that feels good, is when you need something, when you can step up to a group that you've contributed to and ask for help and know that those are your people and they're going to give you what you need. That's like one of the biggest benefits, right? Whether it's for you or on someone else's behalf,
Yeah. Patrick
Totally
says
agree.
life is not a spectator sport. So yeah, get in there.
Another guy separated at birth. I've said that before too. You can't sit by. You just can't.
Sure.
Nice job, Patrick.
Yeah, he's killing it over here. So let's wrap up here. So what we'll do is do some final thoughts real quick. So we'll start with Lee and then go Evan and then Mabel will give you the final word.
No pressure.
Oh no, well, it gives you plenty of time to think. I don't like giving these guys much time to think. So Lee, from a community standpoint, what'd you learn? What would you like to share?
That before this Facebook Live event, I had like a girl crush on Mabel. And now it's even more so. She's a woman after my own heart. I mean, I'm so glad that she is the person we had on this meeting for this word because she nailed it.
She did.
Absolutely.
This has felt very good.
I have a lot of questions that you answered even before I was able to even ask the questions. So it was perfectly timely, certainly. Evan?
Well, I took some notes. Okay. There was a couple of, this kind of felt like a recipe for me. I mentioned them earlier, but acceptance, being respectful, contributing, a sense of equality, and self-awareness. I feel like those words in some order describe a thriving community. And so I'm going to look at those different words and kind of figure out how to apply those in the communities that I participate in to help make them stronger. And also the being a bridge concept, which I've heard before. I don't know where that comes from, but as a great reminder. And I just love that idea of instead of looking at the conflict or judgment or anything like that, asking yourself how you can be a bridge in that circumstance, I think is a great actionable takeaway. So thank you.
I agree. I love the bridge concept, particularly in like a group or a community from a virtual space where it seems real easy that you can go south very quickly, but sort of extending that instead of responding in kind, as sometimes I may do, extending the olive branch and asking how you can be a bridge is a perfect way to diffuse a lot of those hard feelings or things where you may get crossed. So Mabel, thanks again. Final thoughts. What you got? I appreciate it.
Well, I just want to say I did have a moment with you guys when we were all talking and I was like, oh my God, like, this is like such a beautiful community right here. Because I felt all of you, like in your comments, and I just felt like, wow, this to me, that was, powerful. Okay. So I just want to say
that means a lot. Thank you.
What you're doing here is really fantastic. the word community, I think in a sense really comes down to how do you want to participate in it, and do you want to be a part of the community? I mean, there's some people who feel like they're cast out, but are you casting yourself out on your own and saying, well, they're not going to accept me, and not giving people an opportunity to get to know you? So we have to go into a place with no judgments, completely open. And I know, and that really comes down to being vulnerable. So we cannot be afraid of being vulnerable, to just let people know who we are. We talk a lot about authenticity, but that's what happens with the community. When you have people that are being vulnerable and are open and are willing to share, you actually do have a better sense of who the people in your community are. When someone feels cast out, sometimes it's us within the larger crowd that maybe said something for them to feel that way. And that's when we do have to then extend our hand and say, you know what, you belong too. We may not see eye to eye. And, and I believe that's really what's missing right now. We don't see eye to eye, but you still have value. And that's what we have to understand, that we each bring value to our community. We bring it in a different way, and it just makes it so much richer. It just really does. I mean, look at us, we're from all different parts of the country. We're sitting here sharing an experience together. And I think to me, it's been very lovely. And I have a girl crush on York as well.
Wow.
So many things you said, I was like, said, oh my God, I wish I said that, because I said, So I just want to say thank you for all of you giving me this opportunity to be here. And I think this community that you created is very lovely. I think it's very needed also. And in the end, community is what we really want to make of it. Do we want to be part of it, or don't we? And I think it's better to participate, even if you feel that you're going to be the odd man out. Better to give that energy, so then we all come to a beautiful ending and a beautiful solutions in the end.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Wow. You brought the heat in the beginning, middle, and the end.
Nice.
For that. Good gracious. Well, that's all the time we have. In other words, really appreciate you being here, Mabel. I couldn't thank you enough, and we really appreciate this. So stay tuned. Somebody had to log off real quick, but certainly this will be available live or recorded on the In Other Words page. So everybody have a good day. See y'all later.